So thank you for the invitation, thank you for the introduction. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. More? Okay. So I am expected to talk about general system theory, that is to give some basics on that, and also why it is necessary to link to general system theory. So general system theory was the first system theory, I would say, in scientific terms, and it is the root to which all those schools and approaches of today go back. All these roots, all these different branches in which system theory has broken up since then. So, this is the content, this is what I would like to go through with you. It is 3 parts. So, the first part is I would like to talk something about thinking in complexity. That is, how can we and why do we need to think about complexity? So it will consist of 4 parts. I think you can read it also in the last row. It's about global challenges. It's about integrativism as one very essential way of thinking. It's about some words about Ludwig von Bertalanffy, who is known as the father, as the founding father of general system theory, and then the consequences of applying this general system theory to the edifice of science. Second, I would like to go into detail. This is a kind of modern approach that is based upon general system theory. What can we today say about self-organization? What is the basic mechanism of self-organization? What's the dynamics of this, and how can we try to understand this? And why is all of that necessary for the design of the future? This has to do with what I understood, what you have pointed out before in Spanish. That is, you heard about Laplace and the determinism and the deterministic world. In such a deterministic world, you have no freedom and you cannot do anything. This is not something we would like to see and we would like to have and we would like to live in. Therefore, it must be we need a different concept of the world in which we can intervene and in which we can do something which is necessary to get a better future. So, and these are 3 things also. It's about a stage model in which you see how one can model evolution. It's again the topic of determinism, and it goes back. So the last section 3.3 connects back to 1.1 to the global challenges. Okay, so let's start. A new way of thinking in complexity. Why? Why do we need this? All people talk about complexity, the science of complexity and so on. Everything is complex, not only complicated, but complex. And that's a difference now. So complicated does not mean it is complex. And also the other way around. It's not equal. So it means a different thing. Things are not only complicated, things are today complex. And in the end, I will give you the conclusion of what systems theory means with saying that something is complex, but I will anticipate this now that you can recognize it in the end. Complexity means that you have different levels of different quality. And such is the world, such is the worldview we can have now. And there is a kind of certain interaction between these different levels, which also provides for openness, and therefore this is very important to know and to understand that here systems theory is necessary to understand that. So, why is it that just now, since, let's say, at least since the 60s, we are talking of complexity and of systems and so on? This is interestingly because just at the same time we are living in a world of global challenges. That is, we have global challenges, which means those are challenges that affect all humanity. That is, the survival of all humanity. And they can successfully be treated only by humanity as a whole. You know, global challenges is we find the first global challenge we had was what ecology told us. It was the so-called silent spring. That is that we have problems in the relation to nature. Another thing is that we have problems with technology. That is, the peace movement was very active after the Second World War, and it was a fight against atomic bombs and so on. And this is something which is a second threat, that the world could be devastated by those weapons of mass destruction. And another problem, the third one, which is something which relates to the relations of humans to each other. That is, in the beginning it was, that is when I was young, when I was a student as you are today, it was the so-called solidarity movement. It was the movement in which we were solidaric with the third world countries who tried to fight against imperialism. So this has now become, this has now changed a little bit, and social movements also developed. And interestingly, these social movements have seen that all these three different kinds of global challenges are connected to each other, and that there is a basic and a common denominator to be found in this, and this is how our society is organized. That is how the global capitalism is organized, and that this is something which has to be changed in order to have a common future on Earth. So, these challenges are complex challenges. And why is it called complex? Because systems develop complexity, and sometimes they need to catch up with the complexity they develop. That is, they should not be under-complex. That is, they should be able to solve the problems, and these problems can only be solved if they can catch up. So that means complexity needs to be reduced so that it can cope with the challenges, and it can do so by establishing a meta level. That is just another development of complexity. So the system has to become as complex as the problems are, as the environment is, and as the self-made the internal environment of a system is. And there's just a footnote. So there's Ashby's law, and also Niklas Luhmann, there are sociologists among you, so you know that he also talked about reducing the complexity. So that is, in short, we live in the era of in the age of global challenges, which means that we have to save the planet Earth and humanity and civilization as we know it so far. And we can do this only if we can cope with the complexity, that is, if all social systems that are here on Earth can solve these challenges. Okay? So that's the reason why systems theory is important. There are different ways of thinking. A way of thinking is the way how you relate different complexities. That is how you relate a higher complexity to a lower complexity. That's a way of thinking. And it's also a kind of relationship between identity and difference. And it is either unification or it is diversification or something else. So, and there is one way of thinking which is so far the mainstream in science. Still, it's reductionism. And reductionism reduces higher complexity to lower complexity. And it yields identity without difference. So this was the, I'm not sure if you talked about Einheitswissenschaft, unity of science or so. You talked about positivism. I'm not sure if you talked about this.
No, but you mean the Vienna
cycle?
No, I didn't.
But this was one program in the beginning of the last century, in which one tried to have one unified science, and but this was a reductionist program. We can also have the opposite, that is that higher complexity is projected onto lower complexity, which also yields identity without difference. That is, difference is discarded, and then you get identity. But this is also something which is not a good way of thinking, because it does not do justice to how reality is. There is a third way of thinking which disjoins these two kinds of complexity and says there are no relationships between the two. So it is disjunctivism. So it's a disjunction. So you have difference without identity, while in the other two former ways of thinking you had identity but without difference. So that is, the first thing would be unity, and here now the disjunctivism is you have diversification without unity. So this is also something which is predominant in our today so-called postmodern thinking, that you don't bring things together. You don't know how to connect them in your mind. And this is also something why you cannot get to political action in order to know what you should do. Therefore, there's a fourth way of thinking. This is the philosophical basis of systems thinking. It's called integrativism. That is, there's integration. That is, lower complexity is integrated with higher complexity, but it is not at the cost of the lower one, and it is not at the cost of the higher one. That is, there's also a differentiation. That is, the differentiation is still there, but at the same time there's also an integration. That means you have unity and diversity in one. That's a motto which is ascribed to Ludwig von Bertalanffy, who is the founder of general system theory. Ludwig von Bertalanffy was an Austrian biologist, and already in the 30s he developed ideas which were very modern at that time and still are today modern, because he anticipated the principle of self-organization, but he called it in a different terminology. And what he did as biologist was, at his time, there was a big divide between two strands of thinking in biology. There were the ones which were called mechanicists or mechanists. That were those biologists who said, well, what we study in biology, that is all these objects, organism and so on, we can reduce all of that to the laws of physics. And this is just this is a reductionist way of doing it. And Bertalanffy was not really comfortable with that solution, but he was also not comfortable with the opposite solution, because you cannot reduce biology to physics, and therefore there was a kind of counter movement, and this counter movement was called vitalism. And the vitalists thought, okay, no, there must be a difference, we cannot reduce it, therefore there must be a difference of biological organisms to inert, non-living matter. And what's the difference? Well, it's a kind of metaphysical élan vital, a force which you cannot really describe and you cannot study it. And Bertalanffy said, okay, this was his grand solution, and therefore you see that he applied here this way of thinking, that is, the vitalism would be projectivism. Yeah? He said, no, what we find is that there is a difference in organization. If we look at matter, which is not living, it is organized in a special way. And if we look at matter that is biological, we find it's the same matter, it's the same material, the same chemicals and so on, but they are organized in a different way. Therefore, the difference is the organization. And that's a law which can be found elsewhere. And then he talked about not only about organization and order, he talked about systems. He said they build systems, a system has a special order, a special kind of organization, a special kind of organizational relations, which is the structure of the system, and this is the difference between the different systems. But in saying this, he already said what they have in common. They have in common order. They have in common organization. They have in common organizational relations and structure. As to epistemology, Bertalanffy said he believed, or he liked to get into differential equations, and he said yes, it would be nice to be able to describe all of these laws of systems mathematically, but he conceded that it is not possible to have everywhere, and in each case mathematical description. And then he said it does not need to have a mathematical description. You can also have a qualitative description of something which is as good as a mathematical one. So I said already, so he was against reductionism and he was against projectivism. And third, his epistemology, he called his epistemology perspectivism. That is, if you have a model which shall model an object, an objective system, a system of the real world, then this model just models certain traits of reality and not the whole thing. Yeah? And his perspectivism is something like most of you will know as the story of the blind man and the elephant. So everybody, the blind man, sees one part of the elephant and tries to generalize what the elephant is, what kind of object it is. And you have to put together all of them, all of the knowledge of them, and then you can come to a good model. Ontologically, he talked about differentiation and integration. He had, very important is his concept of wholeness. So, that is, he was, in that case, he anticipated what later on by Maturana and Varela was called autopoiesis. That is a network of elements that produce new elements. He said, okay, if we look at the body, for instance, at the human body or some other organism, you find different tissues, for instance. There is a hierarchy of levels. And if you go down to a level, then you find more activity on the level below. But these activities just maintain the quality of the higher level. They contribute to the maintenance of the level above. And yes, so there is a superposition of many levels, so the whole world is structured according to a hierarchy of levels. And ethically, that's also interesting, though he was a little bit conservative, he was a humanist, and he already talked about global challenges in the 70s. He died 1972. So, if we apply this idea, these ideas of general system theory to the edifice of sciences. So this is the edifice of sciences. That is, we have general levels and we have more specific levels. So the most general level is philosophy. Philosophy pertains to science, but it is not a discipline. You have then disciplines, which is real-world sciences, you have formal sciences, and you have engineering sciences. And real-world sciences are natural sciences, for instance, and social and human sciences. Okay? If we now apply this lens, but there's something else which might be of interest if we want to think of the problems of today, if we have the global challenges in mind, then we also need to know how can we cope with that scientifically. That is, what is the contribution of science to that? And that is, we must have a proper science of our contemporary society. So, if we now look at this picture by applying the lens of system theory, please have a look and look what happens here. So, it will transform the whole thing into something else. That is, philosophy will be transformed in systems philosophy. The real-world sciences will be transformed into sciences of systems, of real-world systems. We have formal systems and we have systems design. And the real-world systems can be categorized, which is very normal to do so, in material systems, living systems, and social systems. And that is, there's also a kind of hierarchy in that living systems are material systems, and also human and social systems are living systems and are material systems, but there are material systems which are not living and which are not social systems. Okay? And so you see that the border is now permeable. What does it mean, permeable? To you can cross the borders. So it is not, you don't have closed systems of disciplines, so you can walk through. And the second is you have this upward and downward way. That is, you have findings in empirical, in more concrete, in more specific areas, which you can generalize. And if you generalize, you get up to a higher level. And from that level, you can then go back to another specific level. And so you have this way of detour by going up to another level and then being able to come down to, for instance, if you think about how social systems are working, you could generalize something and then you have something which is a law of real-world systems at all, and then you can go into, let's say, material physical systems without being projectivistic. And also the other way around. That is, with that in mind, you can avoid reductionism and projectivism and also this disjunctivism, which means that all these disciplines are not connected to each other. Okay, this was the first part. Second part, new conception of the world, self-organization. What does self-organization mean? So, first, this is just a text. It is defined as the spontaneous build-up or the spontaneous maintenance of order in matter, or of order in nature, and in and between real-world systems. So that's the definition. And if some of you know maybe the term of intelligent design, who knows intelligent design? Is this nobody? Okay. There are theologists who say, well, God has produced the world, and if we see the world as it is now, it is so wonderfully organized, there must be an organizer. And this is a designer, this is an intelligent designer. And the opposite are the materialist reductionists, who say, well, evolution is something which is going on in our cosmos. You can determine, so each step is determined by the step before, and so everything is can be explained in a materialistic way, but this also does not work. So both things don't work, and therefore this new conception of the world is the solution to this cleft between intelligent design and, let's say, neo-Darwinian evolutionary theory or whatever, because it says matter itself is able to produce order out of itself, and that's it. So this is the trick how we can see this. I'm not sure if I think I don't want to go into this entropy law thing, because this is maybe too much physicist, but on the one hand, you might have heard that people or physicists talk about the heat death of the cosmos. They say that everything will come to a stop and that everything is declining. And on the other hand, so this goes back to 200 years. And on the other hand, it's also 200 years, we have Darwin, who showed that there is a kind of higher organization. There are steps of higher order which we find in our world. So, and these both things did not fit together. And it was Ilya Prigogine, a Belgian physicist and chemist, who found the solution. And he said, what the people say about physics is true, but it is true only for closed systems. And this is now the connection to our topic. That is, he introduced the notion of open systems, and open systems are open for material flow and for energy flow. That is, open systems take up energy from outside. They are open to take in energy from the outside, and they use this energy to perform work. And the work they perform is just the build-up of order, the build-up of organization, the higher organization. That's it. So this is the puzzle solved. And by that, there was also then the merger. It was possible to merge two different strands, namely evolutionary theory on the one hand and systems theory on the other hand. When I studied political science in the 70s, we didn't have an evolutionary thinking in systems theory. Systems theory just was about, you have a political system or a societal system and it needs to be as it is. You don't have any idea why it changes. You don't have any idea why there are revolutions. And you could not talk about evolution of society. This is now possible. And I show you this. This is now the visualization of that. So how does this work? So how does a system come into being? So you have a kind of individual phase for the meta-system transition. That is, I will show you how a transition works. Transition from having no system to the coming into being of a system. So, these agents in a second phase interact with each other. And they interact, and it might not need to be stable, this interaction. That is, it can break down again, and they try another interaction. But this is not yet a system. It's just interaction of different systems, because everything is a system. Also these agents which then become elements of a system, are systems themselves. And now please look carefully, because now comes the third phase, which is the integrative phase, and which shows you what happens here. So this interaction generates a structure. It's called in this science of complexity an attractor, which is produced and in which kind of these activities fall. It's a kind of, Bertalanffy talked of organizational relations. That's it. Yeah. So that's the structure. And if you have this structure, so I just stopped here now, but I now push the button, because this is not yet, that is immediately, at the same time it goes back, that is, then the system comes into existence, And a system, as I told you, means that you have organizational relations that try to order the agency, that is, try to order the further interaction of the elements on the lower level. That is, we have then two levels, a micro level and a micro level and a macro level. So on the macro level you have the structure, which is all the relations, which is different from what the agents do in reality. Yeah? But this structure is as real as what they are doing there. But it is not yet, there's a difference in quality. You have to understand that there is an emergence, that is the interaction brings forth a special structure of what they are doing, and this is on another level. This has a new quality, and because it is a new quality and cannot be reduced to what they are doing, therefore it is called emergent. So emergent are things in which a new quality appears, which you cannot find on the level of the agents. That's emergence. And at the same time, this structure is dominant in relation to the agents. So you have a feedback loop. This dominance means they can be constraints. That is, the structure gives a certain, let's say, matrix for what can be done by the agents, but at the same time, it makes possible for the elements to do something which they could not do before when they were alone. So if you have a system, if you join a system, you can do jointly with the others something which you couldn't do before. Okay. Now the system has come into existence. After this we can say meta system means it is a system which comes after the system. Okay? This is now a supra system, and we can talk about reproduction. And this is how reproduction works. It is the structure says to the agents, please interact in another way, and they do it. But you can also have a transformation. The transformation works like that. That is the emergence. They do something, and then the system shifts into another balance and shifts into another structure, and so you can have also emergence. You can also have transformation of the system and emergence of a new system, so to speak. So this is a basic mechanism, and all of that is self-organization. Now I come to the third chapter. What does all that mean for a systems design which is humane? That is, which gives us the possibility to intervene in the world such that a better society can be brought forth. So, we have an evolutionary systems stage model. All of that includes now evolution. And this is how we can think of evolution. So we have time, that is, we have phases, and we have levels, and we have this together. That is, here you see what complexification means. That is, complexity is raised. How is this raised? Yes, in the way that you have a meta-system transition or the existence of a supra-system, which then consists of one level more than that what was there before. Yeah? That is, in a new phase, you have a new quality in which the old quality is not fully wiped out, but it is carried with it, and it is under the dominance of the new level. And this is what you see here. So it's new organizational relations which then cause the elements to behave in a certain way. This is called downward causation. Yeah, that is, the higher order structure exerts a kind of causal influence on the lower level. So, and now you can realize that evolution is always the addition of a new superlevel. But this is something which is not determined in detail. So, if you apply this to systems, to the evolution of social systems, nobody can say what is the next step we can have in society and which is the next social system. One very important thing was 20 years ago, and this is something more than 20 years ago, and I guess this is just when you were born. This was the demise of the Soviet Union and the German Democratic Republic and all these socialist countries, and no sociologist at that time had made a prognosis and said, okay, these socialist countries will fall down. It happened. It was kinds of revolution and so on, and it just happened, and only in the aftermath sociologists tried to find out why it happened. So this is not only because we have constraints in our thinking, that we have epistemological constraints, but this is also due to reality. That is, in reality, there's a good quote of Edgar Morin, a philosopher, a French philosopher. He's now 92 years old, and he is a sociologist also, and he wrote a book together with Stefan Essel. Stefan Essel, you know, he wrote the Manifesto of the Indignados, so to say. And Edgar Morin says the evolution is open. That means that it is not only our inability to know the future, but it seems to be as if the cosmos itself and the world itself does not know how it will develop in the future. So, therefore, we have to abolish the strict determinism, as you talked about Laplace. Laplace would be that. There's only one possibility that can be realized, and all the other possibilities are not existent. So there's only one option. This would be a strict determinism. Yeah? So everything is predetermined. We have also the indeterminism, which says, okay, this was the Popper of the Middle Ages. In his middle age, that is in the 70s and 80s, he talked about that. He said the cosmos is not, what did he say? The cosmos is a cloud. Yeah? That is, he said, the sun can every moment burn out or can explode every moment. So everything can happen at any time. So you have an indefinite range of possibilities. This would be indeterminism. So both things are not true. Yeah? So what we need is to understand that there is a kind of bandwidth that means you have a realm of a space of impossibilities. There are really things which are not possible given a special way of the development of the system. But there is a kind of bifurcation. There is a kind of realm which opens, which is a space of possibilities, and this is what open systems means. So at that point of time, T, you have different possibilities to be realized. And each historical situation is something like that. You have different possible ways to go. And there are different probabilities also. And what we can do as individuals who have consciousness and who can discuss and who have political deliberation and who can protest is that we can say, okay, we would like to raise the possibility, to raise the probability of one of these possible ways. And today, given the global challenges, we are in the situation of a great bifurcation, which means that first we see these amplifications, and amplifications mean that a bifurcation must take place sooner or later. There are system theorists who say, okay, it is just too late already. That is, the system has already shifted one way. For instance, if you think about climate change, so many scientists say it seems to be too late again to hold the raise of the temperature within a certain limit. So, because it's a complex system and it does what it does by itself. And we are too late now. But there are others who say, well, if we look about the development of capitalism, for instance, then maybe it is in the next 30 years that we have to make changes which then go beyond that, what is now the immediate solution of our crisis. That is, there will be international institutions that regulate the financial capital, but this will not help in the long run. So it is still that we have this great bifurcation between either we take the way up, that is, we can ensure a humane future for all mankind, or the social systems might fall apart, and it's like Friedrich Engels talked about barbarism, so civilization can break down, and it's also the global challenges are like that we can speak of exterminism, that is, that the human race can exterminate itself from our planet. So, thank you so much. This is my job.